Hello, I hope you're doing well. You're welcome to my channel today. You may never know about other people's struggles unless you hear from them. Life is not what you think of it, but what you make of it. Hello, you're welcome to my channel. My name is Adora, and if you are just coming across this channel for the first time, thank you very much for stopping by. Okay, so sometime in many years back, I put in for my application to remain in the UK. So if you live in the UK, you'll be very conversant with what I mean when I mean application to remain. So that means you are trying to apply to stay in the UK, in the United Kingdom. So I put in for my application to remain in the UK, and unfortunately it was rejected. So usually when you put in for an application and it's rejected, you always have the right to appeal the decision made by the Home Office. So I appealed my case, and bear in mind that I was making use of a solicitor, of a lawyer, to handle my case, because in most cases you can't do these things on your own. You have to make use of legal practitioners that are very conversant with the rule of law and all the immigration laws and all that. So I made use of an immigration lawyer, and when my case was initially rejected, he helped me to appeal, and after a while it was turned down again. And at this time when it was turned down, he gave me the hope that don't worry about that. A lot of people have lived in this country for years and they have been applying for years and they keep getting rejected, and all you need is just patience. One day it will click. So I went with that belief that yes, okay, let me be patient and just keep applying and appealing, that very soon it's going to happen. So we kept applying, and then he said we had to go to the appeal court again. We had to appeal the decision of the government again. So we went back again and we appealed. This was like after a few months. It's not like you do everything like back to back like that. So after a few months we went back to appeal again, and after appealing I had to wait for some weeks before I got back the response. And bear in mind that while you are waiting, it's not a very beautiful experience. It's a period full of anxiety. You are anxious to know what the outcome is. You're worried. You're living in serious worry. You are living in serious anxiety because you really want to know, has it been rejected again? Have I been accepted? Even if it's rejected, what's the way out? What do I do? And all that. So fingers crossed, I waited, and after a while, after some months, I can't remember exactly how long that took, finally it came and it was rejected the second time. So at this point I started becoming very worried. I started becoming very uneasy. It started to dawn on me like something, like, am I ever going to be giving? Something is wrong. Is this something we're not doing well? I started becoming really, really worried, But my lawyer kept assuring me that don't worry, it happens like that. You're going to be giving very soon. We just keep appealing against the government. We just keep doing this. We just keep doing that. So I won't lie to you. I had so much faith. I had so much trust in my lawyer. I just believed he was going to do it. So I kind of relaxed. But when I started becoming uncomfortable with the whole thing was when I started getting the rejection after rejection, like back to back like that. And I was like, what's happening? I wasn't just expecting to be hearing bad news from time to time, but that was what it was. So it kept on like this for a very long time. At some point, I started becoming very uncomfortable with the whole thing. I started becoming very uncomfortable with even my legal support. I just felt like, does this man actually know what he's doing? At some point, I asked myself that question, does he even know what he's doing? Now, at this time, I had friends who we were all in the same situation. Like, we were all in the same situation. We didn't have our papers, our documents to live in the country. So we all had one thing in common, which was that. And we all rallied around each other. We all supported each other. We were all there for each other. So sometimes, to kill the depression we were going through, to kill the stress that came with this whole application thing and all that, we kind of stood for each other because we knew what the battle was. We understood exactly what we were in for. So at that point, this group of friends or people were like kind of a backbone to me. We were like a backbone, a pillar of support to each other. So we were all in this ball together, and we were all in this mess for a long time. When I applied, to be very honest with you, I didn't expect that my application was going to last more than 6 months. I didn't expect that. I was thinking at least give or take 6-7 months I should have my leave to remain in my hands. But now it was going into a year, 2 years, 3 years, no paper. And while you are this, you can't work, you cannot go to school, you can't just do anything. So I was just like that. It started becoming very, very stressful to me because I knew that something had to be done. Like I was just really, really worried. It came to a point that each time I wake up in the morning, the only thing I want to see is a letter from the Home Office, a letter from immigration. That was the only thing I wanted to see, nothing else. And at a point, it even got that bad that I wanted to see a letter from the Home Office, good or bad. Let me just get a letter from them. If it's good, thank God. If it's bad, let me know at least. Let me know where we are making a mistake, and then we can fix it. So that was how my day actually was. Just wake up in the morning, fingers crossed, waiting for the postman to drop a letter for you, and hopefully it's from the Home Office. And this was what I carried on doing for many years. Then one day I went shopping, and when I got back home, I saw a letter. It was in a brown envelope. So immediately I saw this brown envelope, I knew straight ahead that it was from the Home Office, because they have sent me series of letters in the past, and it usually comes in a brown envelope. So I was already kind of used to their mode of communication with me. I picked up this envelope shakily. My hands were shaking. I picked up this envelope. I went to the chair to sit down because I needed to be comfortable while reading this letter, so that in case it's bad news, I don't slump. I opened this letter, and the first thing I was searching for is the heading of the letter, the topic. And it started by saying, unfortunately. Immediately I saw that word, unfortunately, I gave up. I didn't even want to read the rest of the letter again. I was like, oh my God, another bad news. I was just too tired of receiving this bad news over and over again. So, but anyway, I just picked up courage. I went ahead and read the rest of the letter, and it says, unfortunately, your application has been turned down again. You have the opportunity to appeal, blah, 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 and all that. So after reading the letter, I called my lawyer. I said, look at it. Because once the Home Office sends you a letter, they will also send a copy to your legal representative. So they also sent him a copy. But funny enough, he didn't tell me they sent him a letter. In fact, after I read the letter, I didn't call him immediately. I called him like the next day. But at least I was expecting him to have sent a message or a call to say, oh, I've just received a letter from the Home Office, let's see what we're going to do about it, or just something like that. He didn't call me. So the next day I called him and I said, I've just received a letter from the Home Office, it's another bad news. And he said, yeah, I've seen it. We're going to see what we can do about it. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. So at that point, I was already giving up on the whole thing. I was giving up on the application, and I was giving up on my lawyer. Honestly speaking, he's a good one. He's a good lawyer, but I felt like we have fought too much on this particular issue and nothing positive was forthcoming. So I'd already given up on that aspect. I was like, let me just leave it and just see what happens at the end of the day. So it went on like that. For a while I didn't hear, because after the letter came, I didn't appeal. There was no direction or directive for me to appeal. The letter did not state we should appeal or we should say do anything. It was just like kind of blank like that. So I was a bit confused. I didn't know what to do. And my lawyer was like, don't worry, we'll see what we can do about it. So I just decided to relax over the whole thing. Just let me just get it off my head, and so it doesn't stress me. And at this time, I had a child who was just 2 years old. So I told myself that, listen, you have to be in a good, right frame of mind to take care of your child and yourself, because if anything happens to you now, what happens to the child? So at that point, I had to put myself together. I said, no, I can't let this thing weigh me down so much. I have to be there for my child. So I woke up one morning. I came downstairs to the living room and I saw a letter. And this was strange because usually the postman drops the letters in the afternoon, but this time around, this letter came in the morning. So I was a bit worried. I was like, brown envelope again. If it's the Home Office, they don't usually drop these letters by this time. It comes later in the day. So I went downstairs, I picked up the letter and I read it. And this letter says that I was needed at the Home Office for an interview, and I should come on so date at so time. And they also enclosed a ticket, a travel ticket, as a bus ticket for me to get to the place, because the office is not in my city, it's in a different city entirely, and it takes about 40 minutes by train to get there. So they actually put some travel tickets for me to be able to get there for my appointment. So when I read this letter, I was like, wow, what's this again? Interview for what? So I called my lawyer and I told him, listen, I just got a letter from the Home Office, and this is what they said, and this is what they want me to do, and I have to get to this appointment at so date. He said, okay, no problems, just keep in touch with me, whatever happens, let me know, and all that. So on the day I got ready, I went to the office. On getting there were a lot of other people that came for the appointments too. So when it got to my turn, they called me, and strange enough, they asked me to come inside the office, like behind the counter. Usually they attend to people at the counter. It's like a bank setting, where they have this counter. So when you come there, you sit in front of the counter while the staff sits behind the counter and attends to you. But this time around, they asked me to come inside the office behind the counter. And at that point, my heart dropped, because I kind of knew what was about to happen. I wasn't too sure, but I knew it was not good news going behind that counter. So I went in there. I was with my son. I went in there, and the officer that attended to me, he said, honestly, everything he said to me, I wasn't listening, because at that point, my mind was not there. As at that time, while he was saying everything he was saying, my mind had traveled far. I was filled with fear. I was not myself. In fact, I wasn't just the one sitting there. So he was talking. And after a while, he said, I would like to take a picture of you and your son. Would like to make an ID out of it. And I was like, ID? You mean an ID card or what? He said, yes. I said, well, I already have one. My son already has one. He said, yes, we just need one, a more current one and all that, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. So he took me and my son to a place. He took a picture of the both of us. And after that, he gave me a form to fill. This was where it became really tricky, because I knew that filling this form without informing my lawyer was not a good one. So immediately I told the officer, I said, before I fill this form, I have to inform my lawyer. I can't sign anything without knowing exactly what I am going into. Even if I have to read it, because definitely I told him I'm going to read this letter, this form, before I sign, before I put my pen to it. So he was like, okay, go ahead and read it. So I took my time, I read the whole content. And I said to him, I still have to speak to my lawyer. At least let him be aware of what I'm doing here. He said, that's fine, that's fine. So I called my lawyer immediately. I said, look at, see what's happening, see what's happening. And he was like, well, okay, just go ahead and, sign it. We'll see what comes out of it. His response was not very reassuring. But anyway, I went ahead. I signed it. I filled the form and signed it. And I was allowed to leave. When I got out of the office, I went straight to the bus stop, to wait for my bus that would take me to the bus station. So I met this lady out there at the bus stop, and I remembered seeing her inside the office, in the home office, earlier on. So we got talking, and then because the bus took some time to come, so while we're talking, I just mentioned it to her, because I was very worried about that form I signed. I mentioned it to her. I said, oh look, they asked me to come into the office and they gave me a form to fill and to sign and blah blah blah. And the next thing she said was, did you sign it? I said, yes. She said, that's not a very good sign. No. That's not a good one. It's in most cases, it's usually when they want to prepare your travel ticket to return home. I said, which home? She said most of the time it happens when they want to prepare they call it a TTC, like a travel ticket. So they want to, if you don't have a passport or whatever, they want to prepare an emergency travel document for you to go back to your country. That is when they tell you to go through that process. You sign the form, you fill it. That's not a very good sign anyway. So when I heard this, immediately my mind raced back to a story I've heard in the past. A gentleman went to the home office like this. He was asked to fill the certain form. He filled this form, and after a while, they prepared his travel ticket. They came to his house. They bundled him straight to the detention center and straight home to Sierra Leone. So when I remember the story, I was like, goodness. Immediately the shock came into me. I was not myself. I was scared. I was like, God, what have I done? I was worried. So this girl, her boss came immediately. She entered the bus and she moved on. So I was just there. This was a cold winter morning. And I was standing out there in the cold. But to God who made me, it wasn't cold within me. I was very warm. In fact, if it was possible for me to be sweating that day in the cold, I would have. Because at that point, I don't know what happened to me. While I stood there, waiting for my bus, I remember my monthly flow came out on the spot. I could feel it. And the reason why it came out was not because it's the normal time for it to come out, but it was the fear and anxiety that engulfed me that made that happen. So I went back home feeling so dejected. I felt so confused. I didn't know what to do. Number one, I didn't know what to expect next. Number two, I didn't know when to expect it. So at that point, after that day, I started becoming very wary of my environment. Each time I see someone that I have not seen before, like a strange face, the first thing that comes to mind is, could this be a home office? official? Are they trailing me? Are they stalking me? Are they trying to find out when I'll be around so they'll come and bundle me? It's even got to a point that in the mornings, because I know they usually raid people's houses, to pick like illegal immigrants early in the morning. It got that bad that in the mornings, as early as 5, 6, I'll wake up. I am usually not a morning person. I don't like to wake up so early. But at this point, I don't know what was waking me up that early. I'll wake up very early in the morning and I'll stand by my window and be looking around just to see if anybody was coming, to see if I was going to get a strange visit from them, like coming to bundle me. And it was a terrible experience. Anyway, so this went on for a long time. They didn't come, but I was always living in worry. I was always living in anxiety. I was always stressed out because I didn't know what to expect. And bear in mind that at this point, I had not even put in any fresh application or any appeal to appeal the previous rejections I've been getting. And also at this point, I decided to just stay, give my lawyer a break, because I wasn't seeing anything positive from that aspect. Like I wasn't, nothing. Every time we appeal a case or we do something, we go to the court, or anytime we just appeal or apply, it's always a negative response. So I just felt like, give that aspect a break and just leave everything to God. And this carried on for a long time, for years, until the good Lord decided to remember me, and everything turned around swiftly, stresslessly, in my favor. It just got to that point, that certain year, when after years and years and years and years of applying, God just did it in his own miraculous ways, in ways I didn't expect, because I wasn't expecting it that way. But before then, I remember I went to a city called Bradford. Bradford is in West Yorkshire in England. So I went to this city called Bradford, and I went to see a different lawyer. And this time around, this lawyer was introduced to me by a friend of mine. We were all in the same situation, in the whole immigration mess. So she told me, Ada, why don't you try this lawyer? I heard he's very good. He helps a lot of people, and they usually have positive feedback and all that. Why don't you go and give it a try? So I was like, okay, it's fine. But at this time, I'd already lost hope. I'd already lost interest in visiting lawyers or going to do one law case or going to see one, because before I even went to see this particular lawyer, someone else had introduced me to another lawyer who was even living in my city. And when I went to see this lawyer said all manner of jagab, those their law terms, all manner of, he confused me, in fact, with different law terminologies. And at the end of the day, he just ate my £400 for nothing. He asked me to deposit £400. He was going to fill some forms, do some this, do some that. And because I was desperate now, I gave him £400. And nothing happened. So when I went to meet this new lawyer in Bradford, before I even went to meet him, honestly, I already lost hope. I was like, well, this is going to be the last bus stop. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, I'll just give it up here. So I went to see the lawyer, and he went through all my applications I have done in the past. And he said, oh my God, I wish I knew you before now. I wish I was the one handling your case before now. You won't have been in this mess. So I was like, yeah, what happened? Why did you say so? He said, because whoever handled my case previously didn't really defend me well, didn't really do a good job. So he was like, as it is right now, I would just advise you to be patient, wait. And then he asked me how old my son was. At that time, my son was 4 years old. My son was 4 years old. And he said, do you know what? I will advise you to just wait till your son is 7 Then once he is 7 years old, we can apply for him to have his leave to remain based on the 7 years residency. So once you apply for him, you can also apply, like once you apply for your son, like any child that is born in the country that lives here for like 7 years, you have the right to apply and you are given. And then be it the mother or the father of the child at that point can always apply based on the application of the child, and you will be given, you'll be granted your residency. I started counting it. 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So I would have to wait for another 3 years or so before this boy gets to 7 years, and I'll not have to apply. And the lawyer said, but you've waited all this while. Why don't you just wait a little bit more? Before you know it, you are there. And I said to myself, well, he has a point. Let me just wait. So at that point, this lawyer also was like a God sent to me, because the way he received me, the way he gave me hope, the way he explained my case, he didn't put fear in me. I've heard of stories of lawyers, because they know you are in this situation, they know you are gullible, you are vulnerable, they know you're desperate to have this thing. They take advantage of you, like the one that took advantage of me and took my 400 pounds. So they know they take advantage of you. They put fear in you so that you go and look for money, or you start living in fear, you start panicking. But this one actually calmed my nerves. He spoke to me in a very reassuring manner, and he told me, don't worry, nothing is going to happen to you. You are going nowhere. As long as you had that child here in the first place, your child was born in the UK, I can assure you that if you wait from now till he's 7, come back to me and I will do the application for you. That was what he said to me. He said, once your son is 7, get back to me and we shall do this application for you. And at that point, there was this ray of hope all over me, and I stood up, I went home, and that was it. That was how my fear just disappeared. So for several months, I was living I was quite comfortable. I started becoming happy once again. I started becoming myself, because initially I was depressed. I was drying up. I was standing but drying up. But God, in his miraculous ways, they does things that we can't really explain. So now I was actually expecting my son to get to 7 before I did this application. But something happened. While he was still 4, God turned around the whole situation, and I was given. My application was granted. And when it actually happened, I was like, is this what I have been crying for many years? Is this what I have actually been like stressing myself over for many years? Is this like, it was all like a dream? But it eventually happened, even before my son got to 7, many years before he got to 7 years old. Now, you see, when I see people that actually, maybe they are back home and they just want to travel abroad, they want to travel, I usually tell them, listen, make sure you have a plan. Don't just go abroad because you want to go, because you're just traveling. Have a plan in place from home before you even make that move. If you think, oh, I'm just going to go to the UK. When I get there, I will now apply for my paper, I'll apply to remain there, I'll look for a route, or I'll look for a means, or I can 100% tell you that it might not be possible. That dream might actually not actualize immediately. Now, even if that happens, even if a miracle happens at some point, it might take like years. I'm talking about like 5 years, 7, 10 years, because there are certain routes that you need to there's certain routes you need to apply through, and all of these routes have processes, and all of these processes have a duration that is usually very long. So would you just come into the country, you don't have papers, you don't have your documents, and you think that when you come, you just sit down and wait until whenever they give you the documents? And while you're sitting and waiting, what are you going to do? Where are you going to live in case you don't have someone to accommodate you for that long? Because, my dear, you might be in the country for as much as 5 years. Who is going to accommodate you for 5 good years? Before you come into the country, look for different routes that are applicable, that are possible and capable of giving you your right to remain, your visa, your permission to work, permission to live, your freedom, because there's nothing as good as freedom. There is nothing as good as you being in a country and you're not looking over your shoulders at every given point. You're looking if someone is coming after you, you're looking if the police is walking after you, you're looking if immigration is coming after you. Sometimes you see a police van in front of you, you take the other road because you are scared. You think that when you go before them, they might stop you and ask you for your ID, which happens very, very, very regularly in big cities. You can't just be comfortable. That's not a good way of life. Honestly, it's not going to be funny. So before you come into the country, make sure you have a plan in place. Are you coming to study? Good, that's a very good opportunity. Make sure you have your study visa. Are you coming to work? Take advantage of these numerous work visas that are going around at the moment, the tier 2 visas and all that. Put all these things in place before you come in, so that when you come in, it will be a roller coaster, a very soft landing for you. So that's my story. Now, I'm not saying this story to discourage anybody from wanting a better life abroad. It's just to prepare your mind on what to expect when you are coming into the country without a plan. Even if, for instance, now, let's assume you just come in without a plan in place. The first thing you should look out for is not money. The first thing you should look out for is how to regularize your stay in the UK. I mean, how to solidify your residence in the UK, how to get your permit, because that's what matters most, not money. How to regularize your stay is the most important thing. Once you have your document to live in the country, you are eligible to work, you are eligible to go to school, you are eligible to use the healthcare, you are eligible to live like a normal human being. But without this, in the absence of that, honestly, I will not guarantee you a soft landing like that. So thank you very much for listening to my story, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye.